Welcome back to the channel. My name's Tefty. Today we're looking at the MPC One hooked up to a Tascam Model 12. So a few videos back I did a MPC One Ultimate DAWless type of video thing, and it was talking about the MPC 2.10, specifically the audio interface support and what it opened up and some pros and cons to it. A lot of you guys had mentioned that the Tascam Model 12 has very low latency, so I was very curious about that. So I talked to my friends over at Zounds, got a Model 12, and decided to run the same test to see whether or not the Model 12 was exhibiting the same amount of latency or less latency or near zero latency. Unfortunately, it's the same amount of latency as the Steinberg UR22, which is about 8 milliseconds of delay from output, from play to output. And a quick rundown how I did that test, just so everyone's on the same page. I hooked up Ableton Link into the MPC One, so there was a wired connection on the network. And then I had obviously Ableton Live going and MPC One hooked up. And then I captured the outputs, the main outputs of the MPC One into Ableton to see what type of millisecond delay, which was averaging basically 0 to 1 millisecond measured delay in Ableton Link syncing. And then I performed the exact same test with the Model 12 using the outputs of the Model 12 with the MPC One, treating it as an audio interface. And I was getting about 8 milliseconds of delay with that setup. Unfortunate that it's not basically near zero, but understandable since it is basically a driver sitting on top of whatever interface software that's on the MPC hardware, so it can communicate with the Tascam stuff. So with that out of the way, I did want to talk about how awesome the Tascam system is with the MPC setup, because with these two pieces of gear, you have a ton of flexibility without a computer being hooked up. Now I know some of you guys harp on me when I say DAWless and refer to the MPC One, but please, for the sake of this video, just bear with me. I am saying that this is an amazing DAWless setup, meaning no computer needed to have a multi-tracking session type of thing. And I got to applaud Tascam for making a great system and device here. Like, it's got compression, it's got individual tracking, it doubles as an interface for both ins and outs. It's really incredible. So actually what I'm going to do is show this jam that Meems and I have been working on, which we're actually going to do in a separate video, but for the sake of this discussion, because I didn't want this video to be too long. So here's what it sounds like. So you get the idea, very moody, you know, slow jam type of thing going on. It's got guitar in there. So the Model D is live. It's going into channel 3 right here. Meems is going into channel 1 when we're performing it. I have the Summit, which is going into 910. Yeah, going into 910 right here. And then the Pro 3 is going into 7.8 right here. So that's the live setup right there. And then 5.6 is acting as drums. Channel 5.6 on the Tascam is acting as drums out of the MPC One, because this is, again, in audio interface mode. And then track 4 is the guitar that you heard on there, which is, let me grab it right here. That's my PRS standard, in case you're wondering. So with this particular setup, I was able to achieve quite a bit of flexibility and still be relatively multi-tracked for mixing down the road. One of the reasons why I like these approaches is because I'm a big fan of separating the actual production side of stuff from the mix phase of stuff. Now, if I'm under a deadline, clearly I'm going to do both. I'm going to do it as fast as possible because deadlines are deadlines. But if I have the luxury of being able to produce something in a separate environment and then have it mixed in a different environment, just hit my Apple Watch. Have it mixed in a different environment, I think that achieves, personally, the best results. So I actually like to use Ableton for mixing, and when it comes to having all the flexibility in the world, I like to use my analog outboard gear as well. So when I can step back from a production that I've been looking at for a few days and then port it over to a separate environment, that gives me a different perspective. Or if we have someone else mix the project, obviously they're getting a completely separate perspective, different results. So the power of something like the Model 12 or the Model 16, 24 and all that is that you can have all this stuff multi-tracked in a DAWless setup, and then you can still capture a 2-bus mix if you want, and you have the option of sending the multi-track over to a separate mixing environment. Or you can just mix it on here separately a few days later because you can have the tracks coming off the card. Initially, this was a little confusing because you do have live, PC, and MTR, which I believe stands for multi-track. So if you do want to work on a mix that was recorded on here, you'd have to just switch everything to the MTR side of stuff. And then you should be good to go. In fact, So this was a performance, a test performance right here. So again, Meems track number 1. Drums are on 5 and 6.
Touch my skin, I feel like quantum bliss. Don't be.
So yeah, that's all coming off the board right there, or coming off the SD card, and being able to just be live mixed essentially with that setup. Really freaking cool. If I'm in a rush, I could do a mix like that, you know? But if I want to take my time and get very finite and specific, I could pop out the SD card, import it into Ableton, and then do a full-on analog mix, or a hybrid mix, I should say. So the power of hooking up the MPC One to something like this, I think should be fairly obvious, because all I'm doing is hooking up one cable, this USB cable. It's going into a hub that is then connected to the Model D, the Arturia, the Tascam, the Summit, and the Pro 3. All those are connecting, and then I'm getting the MIDI information and the audio information being sent from the MPC to the Tascam, and the MIDI information going to all the other devices. One thing that I do notice some people have asked or mentioned is how do they get audio out of things like, say, a Model D or Summit with USB cable? You can't do that. It's just not possible. It is only sending MIDI data information. In order for these devices to be able to send audio as well, they have to be set up as an audio interface. They have to be capturing, or they have to have their own analog to digital converter inside the box itself, which would then send it as a audio interface to the device. And if it's an audio interface, then you can only have one hooked up at any given time, because that's how they communicate. So that's not something that can actually happen. Hopefully that answers that question in the future for some people. So yeah, aside from the 8 millisecond delay that gets introduced with the audio interface system here, I think this is an extremely slick setup for an MPC One Live 2, or anything like that. Simply because you can easily multi-track all the stuff out of here. Like, obviously I'm using other gear, but you can easily just output, say, 10 tracks into the Model D here, the Model 12, and then Model D, the Model 12, and then you can have all 10 of those tracks, send them down to like a professional mixer or something like that, or have your buddy, you know, or yourself mix them. Meems and I are planning on doing another video and showing that jam with the Model 12, and I might actually go maybe further in discussion about the Model 12 and my thoughts as a review. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this video. Didn't want to make it too long, just want to do a quick discussion about the MPC One hooked up to the Model 12. If you haven't checked out our sample pack yet, it is officially out, Phrases Volume 1. It's also an expansion for the MPC One. You can go scoop that at teftymeems.com, and we do have a 25% off code that is active until the end of September. And hitting the like button, subscribing to the channel, and all that stuff definitely helps out. We appreciate all the support, and thank you very much for hanging out. I'll see you next time. Deuces.